Hello everybody, we've got this CJ5 project still going on, and you can see that it's sitting upright again on the body cart. I have all those previous soft top holes in the body welded up. It's amazing how many holes people drill when they start putting soft tops on, but I don't know, there was maybe 60 holes or so to fill. And you can see I've got the templates back in here, and that allowed me to drill the two drain holes right here. And there is the floor, hat channel, spot weld you could see, and all our welding. Now we welded from the back side, remember, and we got 100% penetration through here. That's what I like when I put sheet metal together, 100% penetration. And now we can dress those welds lightly, fair that out real nice, and it'll be a good looking floor. And I'll take you around and show you the other side. Okay, you can see with our paper pattern again, it's easy to get the holes in the right spot. You can see our bead lines up. We've got our gas tank strap hole right in there, our drain holes. So it's easy to do with the pattern, so make sure you take your time, make a nice pattern for yourself. And here is the floor. And again, we've got good penetration through there. We'll just lightly dust over those with a grinder, and then we've got a dent right here we've got to deal with, but we'll take that dent out, and we'll dress the welds and fair those in with a little bit of filler, and we'll talk more about that when I actually do it. And that'll be a good looking floor. And you can see on this side too how many holes there were for the last soft top that was on here. And if we come around to the back, I have that rusted out part of the taillight panel. This was another part that came with the Jeep, and again it was from Classic, and naturally they didn't make that correctly either. You know, there's supposed to be this little bent piece in here, and it's completely left out on the Classic piece. And if you want to see how to make a correct taillight panel, I do have a video on that. I don't know which one it is, but it's an early one. You can go back and take a look at how to make a correct taillight panel. But again, these guys missed on that, so I just cut out a patch panel and put that in there and welded up the holes that were not supposed to be in that panel. And the mount is in there. So I'm going to take you over and show you the old piece and show you what happened with that. Okay guys, there's the old piece that I cut out of the taillight panel. You can see where the mount was. See, the mount is right there. How it rusted that right out and then started creeping that way. And this was so bad even the mount started, you know, rotting out. But this hole right here, the way the mount is designed with a little stiffened rib in there, that hole right there allows a lot of junk to go down and get caught from here to here. It just sits in there and it rots that out. It was a bad design from the beginning, but when you put one of these together, if you put a little bit of seam sealer across the top of that and don't allow any junk to get in there and fill that up, and water and stuff, it'll last a lot longer. It's just a poor design, but this is what happens on you know, 90% all the Jeeps there. You go out and the tire kicks up a lot of moisture and mud and sand and stuff, and it just sits in there. So just something to think about, and a tiny little bit of seam sealer or body putty, something like that, will prevent that from happening. Now this mount was already spot welded to the panel, so we didn't have the benefit of putting any weldable primer behind it. But I'll plug up the top of that hole to make sure it lasts a long time. And if we come over here, this is a toolbox, and this was already taken out when I got it. And they were able to completely sandblast the underside and sandblast the body real nice, and they've got some good primer on here. So before I set it in, we'll take a hammer and dolly and straighten out all these areas that are all bent up and twisted from drilling the spot welds out. And we'll get that sitting nice and flat so it's easier to weld in. Okay, I think you see that. That is a very nice looking toolbox, and this will go in. I've got to put a little bit of epoxy primer on the floor and do some seam sealing where the box is going to go, and then I can weld that in. But I'll show you how that goes, and I'll show you what I use for seam sealer, and I'll show you what I use for filler in just a little bit. So hang in there, I'll be right back with you. Okay guys, you can see a little bit of filler right there, and that's just a tiny little skim coat. The sheet metal there that was sandblasted was heavily pitted. Wasn't really worth taking out, but I just smoothed it out with some filler. And when you put floor pans in, you can spend a lot of time grinding and blending those in, and with little sanding wheels and belt sanders and whatnot, and you can get that pretty nice, and you can make it very nice. I usually like to take the floors up a little bit higher on the early Jeeps. You know, I make them all the way up to that particular seam right there, so it looks a little bit nicer. But it's different on CJ5s because there's not a joint right there. So I like to put the joint right on the bend. That way you grind that smooth and blend it in real nice right there. Now I've seen a lot of guys just take some seam sealer and smear it over the weld and paint that, and that looks real bad. You can always see seam sealer was not meant to be over welded seams on a flat panel. It was meant for seams like that. It was meant for seams like up against the body to the side panel to the floor. So, you know, grind them smooth and just put just a tiny little light coat of filler to ferret in nice and make it perfectly smooth for your primer and your paint. Now I don't use, I guess you call it body filler or Bondo or something like that. I don't use that type of material on the floors. Your feet are going to be on there. That's soft. It doesn't harden up. It chips sometimes on the floor, and I don't like that. So what I use is a product called Lab Metal, and there's the thinner for it. And Lab Metal, it hardens like steel. It doesn't move. When the body flexes, it won't fly off there. It's not soft. Your feet won't scrape it. It's a single part. It doesn't have a hardener like auto body filler. It's a single part. It's a little tricky to use until you get used to it. It skins over very fast. You can't put it on in huge, thick amounts at one time because it's just not designed to be used like that. And this stuff is used on a lot of machines, like machine builders. When they want to smooth an area out, they'll put it on that. You could coat a product and then powder coat it, and if you need extreme heat, they have a very high temperature one. It's really a good product, and that's what I use on the floors. On real pitted areas, you could thin that stuff down, and you can brush it on with a brush and cover a pitted area, and then sand it glass smooth, and it'll look beautiful. If you have other areas to fill, you can thin it down even more, and you can spray it through a large tip primer gun. It sands, it gets hard as a rock, so you really got to be after it, sand it, and it'll come out beautiful. But that's the stuff I use. On the outside of the body, in some areas, you know, there's times I'll use regular body filler, but on floor work, that's the product I like to use. If you guys have never used it, you'll be amazed at how nice it is. And if you've used it before, you know what I'm saying. So that's real good on the floors. There's some areas here. I'm going to try and straighten this out the best I can, but that cowl support is right back there. And there's some heavy denting right here. Area like that, I would use regular body filler. There's no need to use the lab metal because it's kind of pricey. And for what you buy for a quart, you could buy a gallon of the regular body filler. But on floors and stuff like that where your feet are going to be scuffing it, that's the finest stuff that I've come across. And I've tried everything, and it works real nice. So right now I'm kind of going around and getting some things off the body. That was the spare tire vibration damper, little mushroom head bolt there. I had to heat that up to get that out. And I had to cut one of these off another body because this particular body was missing the bow pocket. So I'll get that in. And at one time, I believe part of this quarter was replaced because we've got some craziness going on right here. I can see the weld right here, and there's still a big patch of body filler in here. Doesn't appear that the sandblasting got through it, so I may dig into that a little bit to make sure there's no rust back there. Last thing we want is a big area like this on the side of the body rusting after it's painted. So I've got to get into that area a little bit and fix this wheelhouse. I think you can pick up all that in the camera. It's pretty beat up right there, but we'll get that straightened out. And there was one small area in the bed here that I filled up some holes there. The metal was quite strong, but for some reason it was just pitted away in tiny little areas. So I'll grind that smooth. And I've got the fuel tank sitting here, and I tried that in the body. It fits very nice, but we do have to coat the inside of this one. There's some rusted areas, some tiny little pinholes in the bottom. And then I'll get that fixed up. And at this point, other than a few little odds and ends, we're pretty close to doing some grinding and prepping for paint. I've got to work on the dashboard. The hood has some dents in it that I'm not real happy about on the side that I'll try and get out, and I'll show you guys how I do that. Fenders look real good, and tailgate is already repaired, and that looks good as well. But as I pull each part out, I'll show you what's going on, and I'll keep you up to date with the body build. Okay, everybody, I've got a small section done just where the toolbox is going to go with some of the lab metal. And for every other type of filler, I like to have the epoxy primer on the metal first. There's been a debate about that for a long time, but don't put your Bondo or any type of body filler on bare steel. It'll just cause rusting later on down the road. And a lot of guys may or may not agree with that, but I always completely epoxy prime stuff. Then the body work gets done and sanded, and then we carry on from there. But with the lab metal, this will work on the epoxy primer, but it also works on bare steel very well. And it doesn't heat up like Bondo, and it won't cause any moisture under there, any rusting or anything like that. So when I have the opportunity, I like to put the lab metal on bare steel. But you could see it's lapping from bare steel to epoxy primer, and it holds just the same, but I like to scuff up the steel and put it on there, and it works real well. Now this doesn't dry as fast as body filler, so we got to give this a couple hours. Toolbox is ready to go in. I will sand this out real nice. There's no reason why inside the toolbox shouldn't look as nice as the rest of the vehicle, so just a few minutes of filling that in and it's going to work real nice. And you know, like I say, when you're grinding your floors, and I've seen a lot of guys put floors in, they weld the back side, they weld the front side, then they take their grinder to it and they completely take all the weld off, and you go to step in the Jeep or truck or something like that and the floor will fall right out. You have to leave a little bit of reinforcement if you want to have any type of solid floor, and I like to leave the reinforcement on the inside and then smooth it out. The underneath is ground smooth, as you remember, epoxy primer and then high build primer under there, and it'll look fine. But for the floor, we take it one step further, we fill it in, we fair it out, and a little bit of reinforcement on there is what you want. Very hard with the ups and downs with a grinder to get a consistent thickness of metal when you're grinding, so you'll grind through spots, you'll leave spots high, and next thing you know, your floor is falling right out on you. Don't over grind when you're putting floors in, and you'll be much better off. Okay, so now when this dries, I'm going to take you over to the bench and show you a few things that some students of mine have been making, and show you how that's going. So I'll meet you back over at the bench. Okay guys, in a few of the other videos I've been telling you that I've been starting to make some Scout parts, and that's because I have a Scout vehicle owner. Actually, he's got a bunch of them, Scout enthusiast, and he's been bringing over some pieces, and we've been making patterns and duplicating them, and that's how I got the pattern for that rocker panel. But this is a side patch panel. I think you can see that. It's hard to see in the camera what I'm showing you. There's a side patch panel. It goes from the door opening to the wheelhouse. We've got the correct body line in there. We've got the door jamb. Trying to see if you can see that. Hope you can see that. We've got the door jamb in there. We've got the correct shape to the panel. Everything is flanged as it should be. And that particular panel, the whole entire panel, is what the student made. He comes in here once a week and we make some panels, and this was you know, I guided him along on how to use the flanger and how to use the kick shrinker and stuff like that, but that is for the most part made by the guy that comes in here, and he did a fine job on that. And I made some tooling for the pull max so that we could always duplicate that body line perfectly. We come around in the flanger, bend that over the right amount, and then take this 90 degrees, head over to the kick shrinker, and put the right shape in it. Work on the door jamb. That's a little tricky, but with a little bit of time that comes out real nice. And that's a complete patch panel for a Scout 80 or Scout 800. I'm not too much into the Scouts just yet, so I'm pretty sure it's a Scout 800 and Scout 80. Let me see if I can take you in there. See that panel sitting right up against the press brake there? That is a complete new old stock side panel, complete side panel. So that's what we're taking patterns off of. So we know it's right. I believe he found that a few years ago, and it's absolutely fabulous to work off of that because we know that's the correct panel. So off of that, we came to that, and that will come up about 15 inches on the side panel and make a very nice patch panel. From what I understand, there's patch panels available out there, but they don't have the body line in them. And that's kind of tricky if you put a panel up there and you have the wheelhouse body line, and then all of a sudden on your patch panel you don't have it. So this has it in there, and it's hard to see, but it's in there. I hope you can see that okay. So that's that's what one customer is making. I have some other guys making some other stuff right now, but they're not ready to show it to you yet. And it's funny, I do a lot of Willys and Jeep work and stuff, but I have everybody making different panels. Scout panels, Chevy pickup bed panels, you know, from the 50s, old-time Ford fenders, and some Dodge, I don't even know, but very early pickup truck parts. So it's like I always thought, you know, Jeeps don't carry too much weight with people, but these other guys seem to enjoy coming in, using the tools, and going home with some sheet metal parts. So, like I say, I work one-on-one with people, and have a few guys coming in during the week on different days. And if anybody's interested in making their own parts, whether it be Willys parts or hot rod parts or any kind of sheet metal parts, I'd be happy to work with you. So just send me a message, let me know. And as always, thanks for watching the videos. And that's about all I have for you today. I'll get the toolbox in next time on that CJ5 body, and I will continue on that. And I will continue to show you some customer built parts. So appreciate you watching my channel, and I will catch you on the next video.